Why, hello. I want to do a video on the perception of obnoxious pretense. Yes, I want to make a video on this subject. Yes. And I want to do a video on a perception of obnoxious pretense. And what I mean by this is you can understand a lot of people have motives, and it comes down to relationships and interactions between human beings and the implications and understanding self-awareness, awareness of how people interact and how people have motivation and why people act and react and interact the way they do. And that's because a lot of times there's a pretense to the way they act. There's obviously a false impression you can get from the way they act. They act all excited for some reason, but you know the real reason they're excited about something, oh, I have to get my homework done. But they're excited about something later on, and you can understand why they all seem so jumpy and jumpy. It's not because they have homework to do, it's because of something else they have to do. And obviously it's about understanding those distinctions, but really when you understand all these things, to go back to the distinction subject, is you realize just how obnoxious it is, because I mean, it comes from, I guess, personal experience, not only from me, but generally speaking from anyone that has an understanding like this, of awareness, self-awareness, and understanding how they feel and why they feel for the certain reasons. Applying that to someone else, since generally speaking, say you hear your voice and you don't like the way your voice sounds, you see it in other people and you see they're excited. Not only are you upset that they're excited, say when you're not excited, or you have nothing to look forward to and you're sad and they're mad, it's the association you have. I know exactly why I feel that way. Therefore, when I view something in someone else having that same motivation, it's kind of obnoxious because I know how obnoxious it seems when I have that when I have that perception. Not only that, but the awareness I have of how that perception works. And the more you're aware, generally, the more obnoxious everything becomes. And it's about, I guess, at that point, it's about getting over that and getting hardened to it and getting used to it. But you have to realize there's so much pretense to everything everyone does. Not if they're not, outright, lying, overt lying, or outright overt foolery. You understand people get excited over understand how frivolous it is. And say you intellectually understand how frivolous life is. I've use this example a lot, but you realize how silly a situation is and why the person should be excited, but you see they're excited, and you see how they overlook all the bad in their life just because they get excited because they get to go to the county fair today, and they all of a sudden everything is goes through that filter. Okay, they're excited. Okay, they all of a sudden homework or whatever after school seems not as much like a problem anymore, or all the bad things or any of the things that they had before seem like less of a problem because they're all so excited and jumping. You realize just how frivolous it is. It doesn't mean anything, and you realize that they're still getting caught up in the game. And so I guess it's really about getting caught up in the game more than anything. People still get caught up in the game, and I guess that's, obnoxious in and of itself because they still get caught up in the game. I mean, to a certain extent, I wish I could, but at the same time, I don't want to. I look at it and I see how obnoxious it is, but I know it's obnoxious only because I'm on the outside looking in more than anything. I mean, it comes from that perception. I guess it can almost come from an arrogant perception. I'm not sure entirely, but it comes from something along those lines. And you realize, being very self-aware, if you have a lot of a self-awareness or you're very perceptive, you can understand these things, and they can be very annoying, especially, like I mentioned before, you use that example, like where you listen to your voice and you feel like you always sound stupid or you sound silly, you look at yourself and you always feel like you look ugly in pictures or whatever it is, which I generally think is the case for me, unfortunately, to a very negative extent. But anyway, yeah, you have that negative perception where you feel everything you do has so much pretense to it because you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly your motivations. And when you have those motivations and they're annoying enough on your own, I mean, but the only thing that's preventing you from getting mad at yourself is the fact that you're getting caught up in those emotions, is the fact that you're looking at someone else and you're not feeling their emotions and you're looking at it. And since you're not feeling their emotions and you understand where those emotions are coming from, and you can understand that in many cases, um, it's mostly projection, obviously, but in many cases, it's applied worse because it's not you and your ego. And since it's not you and your ego, not only that, you're not the one experiencing the high or excitement of getting caught up in the game. It seems more obnoxious, and it's because you know exactly where those things are coming from. And it gets annoying. It does get annoying. You see someone get all excited about something, and all of a sudden, um, it's you understand the pretense, even though things are horribly bad. And from your perception, even if you understood that, you could still understand why it might be bad when you look at it from someone else's perspective. It's one of those things. It's awfully annoying, especially when you um, become aware of it and how. I mean, it comes down to the perception where you feel like everyone is on automatic, but the older you get, you realize that everyone's not as different as you may seem. It's just because they're a different person. They come from a slightly different pretense or a slightly different predisposition. They're not working much differently than you, and that's a very scary thing and a very comforting thing, I guess. It's a very scary thing because you realize you're not that confident in yourself, and everyone else, if you feel like you're not that confident in yourself and your decisions and how you make decisions and your intelligence and your choices and how your knowledge of things, if you're not that um, confident, you realize, I guess it's a delusionary perceptive thing. You realize, and applying your ego and thinking that all of a sudden everyone else is like you because of you perceive things a certain way, that all of a sudden you apply that to everyone else. I mean, it's not a good thing to do that because not everyone else is exactly the same as you, even though you may perceive it that way because you view it as people. Obviously, people react; they act a certain way, and like I mentioned, it can be a scary or a good thing because you're not confident in your decisions. Um, all of a sudden, you're not confident. You're very scared because when you said, "Oh, of course, everything's going to go fine," and all of a sudden things go bad. If obviously that hasn't happened based on someone else's circumstance before. If you weren't confident, if you were confident, or even if you weren't confident, it's either that you weren't confident and you lied and saying you were confident, or you were confident and ended up being, something wrong happened anyway. You realize just how scary it is because you don't know if you can trust anyone. And it comes back to personal experience and that being a deterrence. Learning your lesson, personal experience, understanding how things work based on that. People's motivations, they could be a motivation by why they're saying that their personal experience, but not understanding your exact personal experience, and you realize just how confident you are, or not confident you are, or whatever, and the circumstance still went wrong. It makes it harder for you to have confidence in other people because you feel like they're just as bad as you are. In many cases, that's where many of our cynical feelings come from, not just from other people, but from ourselves. Um, because that can have a big influence in how we perceive reality. It takes a lot of that can get in the way. A lot of that pretense of how we perceive reality and how much confidence we have in what other people can say and what other people say and how they say it, and it can work vice versa. You can either make it very comfortable because, I guess when I was younger, I viewed everyone as working on automatic, and I worked very meticulously. I worked very intentionally. I didn't do anything as automatic. But then again, it was from that point of view. When now I look back at myself, I find myself working more automatic than I am now. Even though I perceive myself as understanding things are not as automatic, they're more intentional. I view back when I did think that more, and I look at back at myself and I say, I was far more automatic then than I am now. So it's one of those weird things of cognitive dissonance or contradiction or whatever it is, where it seems all kind of weird. You can call it whatever you want. I don't know. ADD or whatever. I don't know. Put whatever label you want to it. It's a strange phenomenon where it contradicts itself, and that causes cognitive dissonance, like I mentioned before. It can be a big issue in the end. So yes, there is that. The pretense, like I mentioned, I mean, that can be confusing. You understand your motivations, you apply those to others, even though it's not necessarily the case. Generally, you understand there are motivations, and when you realize just how annoying it was on your side, you apply that to other people, and it's more annoying because you're not the one experiencing it. If it was annoying in your perception, and when you were getting all sucked in by life, and you look at someone else, it's just more annoying, and you see why they're functioning is probably similar to why you're functioning because they're human beings or they're sentient beings, and you understand it's because of a simple motivation, regardless of what it is. It doesn't matter. It's a motivation, and you can understand where it's coming from, regardless of what it's coming from. It's the motivation that's causing a specific feeling, and it's the end feeling outcome rather than what's causing it. Like anything else, it doesn't matter what you eat; it matters that you're satisfied in the end, and that's what really matters in the end, I guess. And it's the feelings, and the feelings are not necessarily as genuine as you want. Obviously, they're different to extent, but it's a feeling nonetheless. It's a feeling that we're all going to be similarly experiencing. It's just a matter of how much of the feeling and what's causing the feeling. And like I mentioned, what causing the feeling doesn't mean much in the end. It's the extent that you're having the feeling. We all have feelings of hopelessness, and that doesn't mean much of anything. It's just how far it takes it, how much anxiety you're having, how much physical reaction you're having, how much dopamine is, how much of a lack of dopamine you have going through your brain, or whatever it is, these circumstances surrounding these actual feelings. It's about feeling more or less pain or deprivation. It's either more or less, generally speaking. And generally speaking, we have all these feelings, and it doesn't matter what causes them because we're all having similar feelings. It's just a matter of, in a sense, they're all similar feelings, and since it's irrelevant what causes them, it's all a matter of just more or less at that point, more or less pain. And things can seem meaningless, but it's only because you're feeling very depressed right now. It doesn't mean things are, even though they are, it's not because you recognize it's just because you're depressed. Oh, I'm depressed because this circumstance has befallen me. All of a sudden, I have a negative perception. I mean, things like that. So yeah. Yeah, and pretense obviously is obnoxious, and you realize things aren't as automatic, but not as and more intentional, and that's where the pretense comes from. It's intention and reaction, and how you react, and why you react. You thought it was annoying on your end when you were viewing your own self, and was yourself experiencing it, but you're still annoyed when you're looking at someone else, and you're not actually experiencing the high or the excitement or whatever it is, or the reaction. You just realize, or even in pain, seeing someone overinflate their pain or something. When you were doing it, it's like, this is kind of obnoxious and silly and stupid and pointless. Why am I doing this? This is deceptive. And then when someone else is doing it, it's anger-inducing. We have to realize it's scary not only because they're as similar to you as you thought, even though it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what caused it. I mean, it's scary, but it's also very anger-inducing. You just realize just how, like, why even put up with it when I realize where it's coming from. But then again, it's not always the same. Your projections aren't always accurate, but they're generally coming from the same feeling, but not necessarily the same place. If that makes any sense whatsoever. So yeah, pretense is obnoxious and all those things. So yeah, I've gone over my time limit again. So yeah, anyway, if I have anything else to say on the subject, pretense and all that stuff, I'll mention in another video. So thank you, and until next time, bye.